That's how it's done. Really. Huh. It's just amazing that some people could do this. I could never learn to bake cookies myself. Oh, hello. Welcome back to the Library of Horror Hotel. Come on in for another episode of Creepy Cheapies, where we look for the best in reasonably priced monster masks and appreciate the art thereof. You know, in the world of masks, every now and then something happens that's a big, exciting kind of landmark kind of event. Like when the Don Post classic Universal Monsters were reissued back in the 1998-99 period. That was a big deal in the world of mask collecting. And then when George Ushell offered started coming out with and then offered the Resurrection series, where he redid all of the early distortions monster designs, that was a big deal. I would submit that an equally big deal is that in 2024 did you get that? 2024/25 period, when Trick or Treat Studios released a whole series of very lovingly well-made, very precise copies of old Don Post vinyl masks from the 1970s that nobody has seen for many, many years except for exorbitant prices online. But one such guy, an old friend of mine, an old friend of mine from when I was a kid. It is, of course, the Death Cyborg. Wow, this was one of the coolest robot. I tried to say cool robotic, and I said coolest robotic masks ever. The wonderful Death Cyborg, originally sculpted by the legendary Bill Malone back in 1976, I believe. And one thing that was cool about this guy is he had these lenses. It comes like that, as did the originals, and they have that mirrored sort of glass look that makes him look soulless and spooky and futuristic all at the same time. And what happened is that you cannot see through those things. And hey, I haven't tried this one on yet, but hey, trick or treat! You guys, listen. If people can see through these, then this is not a 100% faithfully accurate reproduction of the original Don Post product. No, you couldn't see through those worth a darn. They're vacuum formed plastic, but what happened was they would fog up after you had worn the mask for, say, a half a second, and then you couldn't see. And I remember going to haunted houses, not mine certainly. This wouldn't happen in a haunted house run by me, no. But I've been to other haunted houses back in the day where you could tell somebody put that on their head and said, forget that noise, and took it off and immediately took a knife or scissors and cut these jagged holes out and tried to leave some of the metallic in there, but they would saw little jagged, yeah, that looked terrible. The other thing people did was just yank him out of there altogether, but then he just looked like a face mask, so you know, with your eyes showing, so you'd have to do something. People would buy mirrored sunglasses, and if the lenses broke, and they were prone to breakage because they were just thin molded plastic, you know, I did that as well because I had one where the lenses broke and I had to put something in there, so I bought mirrored sunglasses. Now, on some of the Death Cyborg masks, the eyes were silver, and on some they were gold. And in the case of the one that I had, it was silver when I got it, but then over time they yellowed, so later on you're like, okay, so now he's got gold eye lenses. That's a true story. And if you can see, he's got little doodads and thingamajigs and whatnots and dinguses here and there. Now, in the original years this mask was produced, which was like 1976, 7, 8, 9, 80, that period, there were a few minor variations. Sometimes the little doodads and dinguses were slightly different. Sometimes this thing that looks like a band, like a collar strap going around, that was up a little higher, and you could see a little more of the doodads right there, the tchotchkes, the fiddly bits. But the fiddly bits varied just a little, and sometimes there weren't any fiddly bits at all on there. Some of them just had smooth necks, but they did generally keep their tchotchkes and doodads and fiddly bits at the temples. No, I'm not saying you kept anything at a temple. No, that would be That would be sacrilegious, I'm sure, on your planet. But look at him. Now, of course, he reminded everybody of Darth Vader. And as I understand it, 20th Century Fox, who had given Don Post the rights to make the first Star Wars masks back in 1977, approached Don Post and said, "Hey, that looks like Darth Vader without his helmet." So they were actually able to produce photos proving that they had this character in mind for production and being designed and sculpted before they were given the first photos of Darth Vader. So 1977, that's before the world knew what Darth Vader looked like. Here's a little story for you that I'll bet nobody in the world will be able to back me up on, but true story nonetheless. At the wonderful Clifton Hill area of the legendary Niagara Falls, Canada. Which way is Niagara Falls from here? That way, yeah. Niagara Falls, Canada, on the Canadian side. The wonderful Clifton Hill had all these great attractions, touristy things. And I don't know today, because I haven't been there for many years, if they still have this, but they used to have quite a selection of spooky themed. There was the House of Frankenstein and Castle Dracula and Ripley's Believe It or Not and a movie wax museum, Boris Karloff Museum, all kinds of spooky themed museums. And one of them that I went to 100 billion years ago, I'm older than you'd guess. I'm so old. I was around, you know, the Dead Sea. I was around back before it even got sick. That's how long. But I was at one of those museums and I could tell, apparently, I guess what happened behind the scenes is their Don Post Studios Darth Vader helmet faceplate broke. As you may know, if you know anything about Star Wars, Mr. Vader has a two-piece affair. His mask and then his sort of samurai look helmet goes on over it. But there was a figure that was supposed to be Darth Vader at one of those museums in Canada, and they had this mask, and they took the Don Post helmet and put it over the top of his head. So it sort of kind of had the look of Darth Vader, but people who were fans of that sort of thing knew, like, what? Something's wrong there. But that's true. I don't know. My guess, like I said, I would guess what happened is they probably broke the face mask, and they had one of these perhaps in the gift shop or something. But what a wonderful, cool design he is. I always loved this guy. He's turned up in the background on a few vintage sci-fi movies. I think maybe, were you on an episode of Logan's Run, the TV show? You don't remember? Oh, of course, you're the new version. Yeah. Anyway, the new version looks exactly like the old version. And what? Oh, you do remember. What were you on? Quark? Did you show up in the background of an episode of Quark? Well, nobody remembers Quark except me and 5 other people in the world, so I don't know if they... Where would they have seen you? Were you in a movie where they might have seen you? Oh, okay, sure. That's right. I'm glad his memory bank is so sophisticated, which you wouldn't expect of a robot from the 70s, you know, but he's right. He was on an episode of Wonder Woman, the original classic Linda Carter Wonder Woman TV series. He was the monster villain in a 2-parter called Mind Stealers from Outer Space. What? Mind Stealers from Outer Space. That's what it was called. And he was the villain. And the way the aliens would use him to exterminate people, after all, he is a death cyborg, although they didn't call him that. They called him some alien name. What was it? Varvan? Garvan? Vorlon? Varvan? Nylon? Something like that. But the aliens would throw glitter on you. They would throw glitter on you. And you know how hard it is to get glitter off if you get it on you. And then he would know where the glitter was, and he would come and assassinate whoever. And they had this guy, and they painted a little bit of a sort of not white, but a lighter highlight on him so that he showed up better on film. So he has sort of a lead pewter look, so he's not totally black. He's mostly very dark like this in Wonder Woman, but he has a little bit of highlight. And well, he wore a dark suit and he wore a cape like Darth Vader, and he looked like a caped, you know, like a death cyborg, like a robot in dark clothes and a cape. And then he had Wolfman hands. What? Really? Couldn't they have found a pair of like ski gloves or bricklayer's gloves or something? Black glove? Something? No. they put him in Wolfman hands with claws. So you've got this futuristic robot from space who wears clothes and a cape and all that, and yet he has like monster claw hand. I know that kind of spoiled it for me. Also, I remember they had glued on an extra tchotchke right there. They had glued a thing on his forehead. I don't know why, just to make him a little more distinctive, I guess. But he was on that. But what a great character and a great all-purpose science fiction futuristic robot looking character. And the Trick or Treat one, which goes for around 60 bucks, is made of thick black vinyl, just like the originals. And by the way, the vinyl masks look shinier on the inside. People ask me, how can you tell the difference between latex and vinyl? There are a number of ways. One way is that vinyl masks usually look shinier on the inside, whereas latex masks have more of a matte finish to the inside. But what an awesome thing is good old Death Cyborg by Bill Malone from Gone Post Studios after all these years. And the Trick or Treat version comes with one of those clear plastic shells in the front to hold the face in shape, which you can either leave in there or you can yank it out of there at your discretion when you get hold of one. But you know, that will prevent these things from getting broken, at least in shipping and storage, because that was always a problem back in the late 70s. And by the way, there was a variation or two offered later on. If you kind of remember this face, but you remember it being red, there was another robot version offered many years later, but it was not anywhere near as impressive as the old Death Cyborg. I think it was called Mach 2. Nobody cared because it was rubber and it was kind of floppy and it didn't hold its shape nice and rigidly like the heavy black vinyl Death Cyborg. And it would be fun to make a costume for this. I try to stay away from Darth Vader looking stuff too much because I wouldn't want people to think it's supposed to be Darth Vader, and I did a poor job of recreating Darth Vader's costume. So I'd try to come up with a kind of a different look, but of course he's going to have spacesuit-ish looking futuristic stuff, maybe some tubes and hoses, maybe little blinky lights on him, but really fun one to make a costume for. Although, if you're going to be wearing it, as opposed to displaying it on a mannequin or a figure of some sort, if you're going to be wearing it, well, you may want to carry a white cane with a red tip to make sure you know where you're going, because you are really not going to be able to see through those things very well. Unless you just have to stay in one spot at the haunted house, then you'd be fine. If you just have to stay in one place and not move around and mix with people too much, that'd be fine. But apart from that, you might end up with those silly mirrored sunglasses being stuck in there again, which of course is a nice option for wearability, but sort of devalues the collector purposes of the mask. And I wonder if he could hear if I stuck my fingers in his ears, because they're not real ears. Does he really hear with those, or are do those serve some other function? Oh, those keep him awake. He's just falling asleep. Let me just, okay, that's better. No, he's rebooted. And what kind of boots would you wear with him? Reboots, sure. All right, goodbye, Mr. Death Cyborg. We'll see you weirdos here again next time, where we'll take on another great mask. And until then, get yourself a Trick or Treat Studios Don Post reproduction Death Cyborg from the late 70s. Only get one in 2025 for about 60 bucks from the creeps at Trick or Treat Studios. And we'll see you again. And until then, I hope you have a better week this week than you had last week. I mean that, I do.